The unfinished love, the papers that broke a soul. Did you know a single piece of paper can shatter a person's reality? That a mere signature can turn a confident man into a hollow shell? Michael never thought a few sheets of paper could dictate his fate. He had signed countless contracts in his life, business deals, mortgage agreements, job offers. But the divorce papers lying on his desk were different. They weren't just ink on paper. They were the closing chapter of a love story he never thought would end. When the envelope arrived that morning, his hands trembled. His mind screamed at him not to open it, as if avoiding it would change reality. But his curiosity, no, his desperation, got the better of him. He ripped it open, his eyes scanning the words that felt more like a death sentence than a legal formality. Irreconcilable differences. 2 words that summed up a decade of love, laughter, and pain. But it wasn't just about losing his wife. It was about losing the dream, the promise, and the woman who had once been his entire world. And yet, this wasn't just about Claire, his soon-to-be ex-wife. No, this went deeper. This was about her, the one before Claire, the one he never truly let go of. His first love. The past had a cruel way of creeping back into the present, like a ghost refusing to be forgotten. And as Michael held the papers, a memory surfaced so vividly it felt like he was there again, standing in the rain at 18, watching her walk away. "If we're meant to be, we'll find our way back to each other," she had said. He never did find his way back to her. Life had carried him in another direction, and so had she. But now, standing at the precipice of another heartbreak, he realized the bitter truth. He had never truly moved on. Love, loss, and regret. Michael's mind spiraled. He had spent years convincing himself that Claire was his destiny, and maybe she had been. But as he sat there drowning in regret, he knew that the divorce papers weren't just about Claire. They were the final confirmation that he had never really healed from his first love. That every "I love you" he had ever spoken had carried the weight of someone else's shadow. The guilt was suffocating. Claire had loved him deeply, fiercely, and yet deep inside, he had always held on to something else, something unfinished, something that made this moment feel less like an ending and more like a reckoning. That night, he didn't sleep. He stared at the papers, his thoughts running wild. Was this his punishment for never letting go? Or was it a sign? Was life giving him one last chance to fix what had once been broken? As the city lights flickered outside his window, a decision began to form. He needed to find her. He needed to know if the past was truly meant to stay in the past, or if, just maybe, the universe had other plans. The pen felt heavy in his hand. The signature line stared back at him, but instead of signing, he reached for his phone. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, his heart racing. He typed a name he hadn't spoken in years. And then he pressed search. The unfinished love. Shadows of the past. Michael's heart pounded as the search results loaded. It had been years since he had last seen her, spoken to her, even thought about her in any way that wasn't laced with regret. And yet, in this moment, everything felt fresh again. Raw, painful, urgent. Scrolling through countless profiles, his fingers trembled. What if she was gone? What if she was married? What if she didn't even remember him? But then, there she was. Her name, her face, the unmistakable glimmer in her eyes. She hadn't changed much. Time had been kind to her, just as it had been cruel to him. And suddenly, he found himself holding his breath, his mind flooding with every memory he had buried deep inside 15 years ago. It was the summer before college. The night was warm, the sky scattered with stars, and she stood there in front of him, her eyes filled with the kind of certainty he never had. "Promise me," she had said, her fingers gripping his wrist. "Promise me, you won't forget me." He had promised, but promises meant nothing when life had other plans. He had left for college, and she had moved away. They had written for a while, but the letters slowed, the phone calls became less frequent, and eventually, she disappeared entirely from his life. But never from his heart. The present. Michael hesitated before clicking on her profile. He didn't even know what he would say if he reached out. Would she welcome him? Or would she laugh at the foolishness of a man who had lost too much, too late? And then, as if the universe itself had a twisted sense of humor, his phone buzzed. A message from Claire. "Have you signed them yet?" Michael exhaled sharply, his eyes flickering between Claire's message and the screen in front of him. He had a choice to make: close the chapter on his marriage or reopen a wound that might never heal. Memories, guilt, and a crossroad. He stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. He could feel his pulse in his throat, his breath shallow and uneven. This was insane. Chasing ghosts, reliving the past. It wouldn't change anything. But what if it did? His feet moved before his mind could stop them. Grabbing his car keys, he left the apartment without a second thought. He wasn't just looking for answers anymore. He was looking for redemption. The city streets blurred past him as he drove, his grip tightening on the wheel. He knew where she used to live, knew the places they used to go. Maybe, just maybe, he could find her again. Maybe fate would give him one last chance. The past wasn't finished with him yet, and neither was she. The unfinished love. A road back to yesterday. Michael gripped the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles turned white. The city lights blurred outside the window as he raced through the streets, his mind lost in a haze of emotions. Every moment that passed brought him closer to an uncertain fate, one tied to a woman he had spent years trying to forget. As he neared her old neighborhood, nostalgia hit him like a wave. The streets, the familiar park on the corner, even the faded graffiti on the walls. It was all the same, frozen in time while he had changed beyond recognition. Would she even remember him? Michael parked outside her childhood home, his heart pounding so loudly he thought it might break through his ribcage. He hesitated. A part of him wanted to turn around, to walk away before he made a fool of himself. But another part, the part that had been longing for closure, refused to let go. With a deep breath, he stepped out of the car. The house looked different now. The once vibrant garden had wilted. The windows were drawn, and there was an eerie silence in the air. His fingers hovered over the doorbell. Just as he was about to press it, the door creaked open. A woman stood in the doorway, her expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Michael!" Her voice was barely above a whisper, his breath caught in his throat. "Sophia." For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if time had folded onto itself, bringing them back to a place neither had dared to revisit. I didn't think I'd ever see you again," she finally said, her voice tinged with something he couldn't quite place. Was it relief? Or regret? Michael swallowed hard. "Neither did I. But here I am." She stepped back, motioning for him to enter. The inside of the house was filled with remnants of the past, framed photographs, faded furniture, the scent of familiarity mixed with something new. "You look different," she said softly, her eyes searching his face as if trying to piece together the boy she once knew with the man standing before her. "So do you," he admitted, "but I think some things never change." She smiled then, small, hesitant, but real. "Why are you here, Michael?" He took a deep breath. "I got the papers today, my divorce. And for some reason, my mind kept coming back to you, to us. I needed to see you, to know if I was wrong to ever let you go." Sophia's eyes darkened, the weight of his words settling between them. "Michael, the past is complicated, and so is the present." He nodded, his throat dry. "I know. But do you ever think about it? About what we lost?" A silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken words. Finally, she let out a breath she had been holding. "Every single day." The confession hit him harder than he expected. He had thought about her endlessly, but to hear that she had done the same was almost unbearable. "Then maybe," he said slowly, "maybe it's not too late." Sophia looked at him, her gaze unreadable. "Or maybe it is." The words stung, but Michael knew this wasn't the end. If anything, it was just the beginning of something even more complicated. The final choice. Michael's heart pounded as he stood in front of Sophia, her words ringing in his ears. Or maybe it is. Was it truly too late? Could love, once lost, ever be found again? The weight of the past pressed down on him like an avalanche, but something inside him refused to let go. He had spent too many years living with regrets, and now, as he faced the woman who had once been his entire world, he knew he had to fight for an answer. Sophia. He took a step forward, searching her eyes for any sign of hope, any sliver of the love they had once shared. "Tell me the truth. If I had never left, if things had gone differently, do you think we would have made it?" She hesitated. The silence between them stretched unbearably long, and then, with a voice that trembled under the weight of memories, she whispered, "I don't know. But I do know that I never stopped wondering." Michael's breath caught. She never stopped wondering. A lump formed in his throat as the years flashed before his eyes. Every sleepless night spent replaying their last goodbye. Every hollow moment in his marriage when he knew something was missing. Every unspoken word that had haunted him. But the past wasn't the only thing standing between them. The present was just as messy. "I need to know something," Sophia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you here because you still love me? Or are you just trying to escape the pain of your divorce?" The question sliced through him like a blade. He had asked himself the same thing countless times since the papers arrived. Was this about finding Sophia again? Or was it about not wanting to be alone? He faltered, struggling to find the right words. "Sophia, I don't have all the answers, but I do know that losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. And if there's even the smallest chance that we can find something again, I have to try." She looked away, emotions flickering across her face. Pain, longing, uncertainty. "Michael, I don't know if we can just pick up where we left off. People change. I've changed. And I need to be sure that this isn't just another moment that fades away." Michael reached for her hand, his fingers brushing against hers. "Then let's find out together. No expectations, no pressure, just us. seeing if there's still something worth saving. Sophia exhaled shakily, as if weighing the possibilities, the risks, and then, after what felt like an eternity, she gave the smallest nod. "Okay," she whispered, "but we take it slow." Relief crashed over him like a tidal wave. He had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in years, he had hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, unfinished love didn't have to stay unfinished forever. As he stepped outside, the night air felt different, lighter, filled with promise. He wasn't sure where this path would lead, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't walking it alone this time. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that remind us why love, no matter how complicated, is always worth fighting for.